From Unity Church of Christianity in Houston, Texas, this is The Awakened Life with Reverend Howard Caesar. Unity is a non-denominational Christian church providing a positive, practical, and progressive approach to Christianity. Let's join the service in progress with the Reverend Howard Caesar.
Today I'd like to begin by sharing with you a number of statements. They're what I call realize it or not, whether you realize it or not statements, okay? Whether you realize it or not, boom. Okay, some you may agree with, some you may not, some may stretch you. Who knows what your response might be. But whether you realize it or not, the truth is you truly are a spiritual being. Or as some have stated, you are a spiritual being having a human experience. Whether you realize it or not, you are an eternal being. In other words, your spirit and soul will live on in other realms, heavenly realms. As Scripture states, in my Father's house, as Jesus said, in my Father's house are many mansions. All right, another translation of that, the original supposedly was, in my Father's house are many rooms. And the metaphor there is really, it symbolizes the idea that in my Father's house are many realms, many worlds. He used rooms and mansions, but there are other realms, okay? Whether you realize it or not, as an eternal being, you pre-existed this life. You have lived before, many lives. All of those who follow a spiritual path on this planet, of all of them, there are more that believe this idea than do not. Unity is one of the unique Christian churches that does accept reincarnation. It has accepted some of the blending in ideas of some of the Eastern thought, ancient thoughts and teachings that have been on the planet forever. And so it might interest you to know also that reincarnation was accepted in Christianity until it was politically removed by the church in the 4th century. There's evidence of that. Doesn't matter. Whether you realize it or not, having pre-existed this life, you made agreements as to what you would be about in this life. It's kind of an agenda that you set as to what you would be here to learn, what it is that you would move through, what it is that you would heal, what it is that you would contribute to this world in this life through being a loving being, a more loving being, and what it is that is the spiritual awakening that you would bring and offer or be afforded through having been given this life. And whether you realize it or not, you intensely desired to come into this life, to have the opportunity to come into this experience. It is a gift, you know, so that you could have the opportunity to learn and grow and evolve, to unfold, to awaken in the ways that you have to this point have not along your eternal path and existence. And whether you realize it or not, you came into this three-dimensional realm of form so as to be able to be in a place that had cause and effect, could give you a readout, could mirror back to you what was going on internally. Things move from within out, and so you could look externally and see what it is that you were actually creating, even unconsciously, to help you gain progression. And you were here, therefore, to bring the unseen 4th dimension into the seen, or the realm of form. In other words, you're here to bring a bit of heaven to earth, okay? And to rise above what it is that you may encounter in the way of circumstances in this three-dimensional world. And you came into this life experience so as to, as it's been said, to dance with God, okay? For life holds always the invitation to dance with God. Every person, every soul is here to dance with God. The invitation is there to dance in higher energies, to partner up and dance with the divine. There's a mystic, a Sufi mystic and poet named Hafiz, and he is quoted as saying this: "You're invited to meet the divine. No one can resist a divine invitation. And that narrows down all our choices to just two. You can come to the divine dressed for dancing, or be carried on a stretcher to God's ward. Sounds like punishment, but that's not really what he means. And you need to stress you can dance and come dressed. Okay? Essentially what it says, as I see it, is that you are invited into this life to meet the divine, all right? And that you are being called basically to express more God. That's what it's about. You are at all times invited into a higher, freer, more complete, expanded version of life than you have been currently living, and to have that be lived in and through you in this life. And that invitation shows up in a person's life as either an inner urging, a tugging at you for more expression, or it shows up as discontent and dissatisfaction with where you are now, the way things look in your life. And so on a conscious or even subconscious level, we know that the invitation is there, the invitation to move into more of God being expressed in us. And there can be great frustration when we're not doing that, really. And it shows up in various ways, because we agreed, to come into this experience, to say yes to that unfolding process. So either the inner urging to express more of God, or discontent, dissatisfaction, will have its way with you in this life. One or the other will be going on. It can be fluctuating some as well. And so you can come dressed for dancing, show up, in other words, ready and willing and prepared to do whatever it takes to answer the call to that inner urge and desire to move forward and progress and evolve. Or you can be carried on a stretcher, which means you simply are resisting the call of that inner desire, which causes you to get bogged down in the discontent, have your life be about a lot of internal conflict, have it be about struggle. As your minister, I encourage you to accept the divine invitation and get dressed for dancing. In fact, I'm here to help you dress, okay? To put on the consciousness of dancing. I'm here to remind you and to remind myself, really, to consciously and purposely and intentionally answer to the call to be a more expanded expression of the divine, more than we have been, perhaps, to move at least in that direction. I'm here to help anyone move from discontent and dissatisfaction into a healthy spiritual motion forward that fulfills that inner desire that we all really share on some level. I'm here to call to awareness the importance of spiritual evolution and unfoldment. We are all evolving spiritually, in either willingly or, as they say, either going willingly or kicking and screaming. And so recently I have had a colleague share that there are at least 4 stages of spiritual evolution. And I found it intriguing and related to them, and kind of expanded on some of them, and I want to share them with you today. The 4 stages are why me, by me, through me, and as me. Got that? Why me, by me, through me, and as me. Okay. It's a path of progression. Last week we talked about Jesus and the parable of the sower, and that was really a metaphor for progression, or readiness and openness and receptivity for movement of truth, to have life in you. And it's the sower that's always sowing seeds of truth, but we are all at different states of our development and unfoldment. And for some, there is a total disregard. And so it's like seeds that fall and birds come up and fly away with them. They fall by the wayside. And then there are others that fall on stony places. The soil has no depth. It doesn't last. You maybe hear the truth. It has a little spark, but it's gone. You didn't get rooted in you. And then some fall among thorns. In other words, there's our past, our issues, our charges, our things going on in us, our fears that are like thorns that come up and choke out that truth. It isn't able to really live and be free to grow in us. And then finally, some seeds fall on good ground, and it bears fruit, some 100-fold. So that was Jesus' way of talking about that progression. In today's lesson, we're saying that there are 4 stages of progression, of spiritual evolution, and we're breaking them into the categories of why me, by me, through me, and as me, okay? So let's tackle why me. The why me is really the poor me. It's the victimhood. You know, it's at this level, and I'm not saying we're there. This is all for us to see where we are or where we've been, okay? At this level, life is a struggle. Life is really hard. There's internal conflicts going on. A person feels separate, out of sync, disconnected. They feel oftentimes powerless or hopeless in their situation. They're a victim or feeling a victim of circumstances. This is a life that sometimes is reflective of one's mortal self. In other words, the why me is usually living from the mortal me. We think of ourselves as a physical human being, and we don't have a concept of living from ourselves as a spiritual being. We tend to be into blaming. We believe that the circumstances that we find ourselves in life, whether it be a relationship or every problem, every failure, every challenge or conflict that we face, is because life is doing it to us. All right? There's no sense of taking responsibility. And we're not only in the world, but we are fully of the world. And so our life is always a look outward, never really a glance inward yet at that stage. And at that stage, there are lots of crises. There's lots of complaining. There's lots of drama. One is lost in one's fears, inferiorities, all kinds of stories being told inside our mind over and over how awful it is and how much we are a victim. I like to use the metaphor of playing baseball to make this a little bit more palatable. I love the game. I played a lot of baseball. So anyway, at this stage, we aren't a very good baseball player. We never practice. We don't study the game. We don't learn the basics and the fundamentals. We aren't willing to apply any of them, so we aren't very good. And so we strike out a lot, and we're disgusted with the game a great deal. You know, we start telling ourselves, we don't like this game. It's a dumb game anyway. And we don't like the coach, and we don't like the players. And we don't like the players oftentimes because the good players remind us of what we're not. And so we blame the umpires. We blame everyone for our not being able to play this game very well. And most or many of us have known this stage of why me. And hopefully we are done with it or moving out of it. Or have very little going on in relationship to it. The next phase is by me, the by me stage. And whereas the first was why me and kind of the mortal me, this is where you're stuck in circumstances. The by me stage is really where we begin to break out of that other one. And we begin to grasp a vision of what's possible, a dream, some goals show up, and we actually have that flicker of possibilities that our life could be different. And this is where we are aware of our desires now, and we own, to some degree, our discontents and our dissatisfaction. We're not as much projecting and blaming. We're realizing that we are being called in this life to something more, and we realize that we have the ability to bring it about and go for it. And so it's also known as the metaphysical me. In other words, metaphysical means beyond the physical, so that you begin to see a dimension of life beyond simply the physical realm of form. And you begin to realize that there are creative energies that we are managing in this life. We've come to realize that being positive and optimistic actually can be fairly important, and that good thoughts are important, and that having a good perspective and a good outlook can be valuable, and that holding images of what we want as opposed to what we don't want could be important. And we are truly a creative being, and we have become metaphysical. Metaphysical me is the by me, realizing there is more than meets the eye. And we have learned a bit about perhaps the laws of mind and mind action. And we come to realize to some degree that there are universal principles that are at work in this universe and in the world, and we can begin to play with them a bit. and that we've pressed through some of the barriers that we've had, ideas, beliefs, limiting things of our past, issues, and what have you. We're beginning to push through the things that have held us back. And so we're moving forward at this point in this stage. And we have to enter, to do that, to do that we realize we have to enter into some level of clearing, releasing, letting go. That's a part of it. We can't hang out in the past. We can't stay with the thoughts that we have been in. And so we are simply moving in consciousness, and that there is the Newton's law of motion, third law of motion, which says basically for every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. And that means, therefore, as I establish an action and a movement towards higher states of consciousness, all my unconscious stuff that has stood in the way and I've not even been aware of necessarily would begin to come up to the surface. That which obstructs it. That is its opposite, you understand? So we have to push through some of that. We're not any longer lost in pity. We're not any longer lost in victimhood. We have recognized that we have ability, that there is a potential for something greater in this life, and we're beginning to move in that direction. Life has already gotten a little bit easier. Life has always, not always, but also become a little bit more fun. And so it still can have, however, a lot to do with ego, the by me. You know, it has the consciousness that everything is about me. I'm the one that's doing it. You know, whatever successes in business, in life, in this or that, it's caused by me. We're there. So that's kind of that stage. Even if we understand there are universal principles and laws at work, it's really me that is efforting, me that is working them, me that is making it happen. And so the successes are kind of, the ego is still there, has us in its grips, as it does in the why me. Okay, so as far as baseball goes, the metaphor, I now realize there are greater principles and skills to this game, and I'm going to have to apply them. And so it's me that has studied them. It's me that has learned these skills. It's me that has worked at them, practiced them, learned to keep an eye on the ball when it's coming in, keep my head steady, have a level swing, not bail out on the curve, cut down my swing on a fastball. You want to hear more? I have all kinds of baseball stuff. So it's all about the principles of hitting being executed by me. It's by me still. There is some success and progress being realized, but it doesn't carry over to a deepening awareness of the divine as to where we're headed. It's mostly about how we measure up with the rest of the world and other people. It's competitive still. We're living mostly from the intellect. We haven't really opened our heart. Then we get to the third stage, through me. The why me is the mortal me. The by me is the metaphysical me. The through me is the mystic me, the mystic me. And this is the stage in our spiritual evolution, the evolution of consciousness, where we begin to hunger and thirst more for the spiritual, where we begin to surrender to God more, where we begin to open more to God, talk to God more, practice the presence of God more. We become more of a vessel that God is working in and through. And it's, get the word through me now, you know, where we realize that there is something bigger, there's something more vast and expansive than our finite humanness, that there's something bigger moving through us. It's not only about by me. It's not all done by me. It's being done through me, and that's a shift. Okay, it's a bit mystical. The mystical begins to seep in, and our heart begins to open, and love begins to be born in us that takes us beyond personalities, and it becomes more all-inclusive. It's a love that has a greater expanse moving through because it's moving through you. Okay, so love is now a through me endeavor, not by me. That peace is now a through me dynamic. Joy is a through me encounter. Goodness of any kind is now a through me, God through me. And we realize that also there are a variation of different vibrations and frequencies that are moving through us. And like turning a radio dial, we are more consciously now tuning in to God, all right? And we're more awake to the higher frequencies. And Albert Einstein back in the year 1905, he proved that we can break matter down into smaller parts, and that when we do, we basically move beyond the material realm into a realm in which everything is energy, right? You've heard everything is energy. Well, it's interesting, there was a genius of a guy named Buckminster Fuller who was giving a talk, and the talk was given in 1983, and he shared this. He said to the audience, in 1928, humans first discovered the existence of a galaxy other than our own Milky Way. Since then, we have discovered 100 billion more galaxies, each averaging over 100 billion stars. Each star, he said, is an all-out, chain-reacting atomic energy plant. Life is energy, all right? That was in '83. How much more? That was 30 plus years ago. And with more powerful telescopes and everything else, how much more have we discovered of the vastness of the infiniteness of God's creation? Okay, but it's all energy, and life is vibration, and nothing rests. Everything is moving, everything vibrates. And we have a variety of manifestations physically, emotionally, spiritually, because we have different levels of this energy vibrating through us, depending on where we are on our path of evolution spiritually. And so the why me state vibrates at a low frequency because it's full of fear and resentments and victimhood, and feelings of love and peace and joy are of a high frequency, okay? So at the stage of through me, we have learned that when something doesn't turn out the way we want it, rather than getting stuck in disappointment or in a low vibration, we're inclined to look at what is here for us to learn, what is here to be gained. We reach for a truth that can move us through this. You know, we don't beat ourselves up. We don't stop loving ourselves. It's not about loving or not loving. It's about learning. And so we accept. We get to the point where we accept what is. And we, rather than running from what is, we face it. Rather than blaming, we face it. We don't get stuck in it. We accept it and move on. And we lean into our feelings. You know, many a person is in addiction because they're running from feelings they don't want to face. And so at this point in the through me stage, we've begun to move to where we no longer escape those feelings. We face them head on, knowing that something is trying to clear itself and be released. And so I love the rule that says all feelings fully felt lead you to the feeling of love. That basically when you go for love, there's going to be some other stuff that comes up and gets in the way, but it's just to be released. And the more you release it, the more you release it, the more pure it becomes the love. In baseball terms, we now realize that we never go up to bat alone, that there is a presence moving through us, through me, playing the game through us, giving us the skills to see the ball, swing the bat, have the success. God is moving through us, through me. And even if and when we should strike out, we accept the what is. We don't get stuck. We don't identify with anything as being a failure, but simply another opportunity to learn, to grow, to take new aim, and choose again. We keep expanding in the love of life. The fourth stage, we've discussed so far, why me, by me, through me, and the next is as me. And this is also could be referred to as the master me. And you can know that we fluctuate between probably the first three, but this fourth one is a biggie. You know, we may be doing, hopefully, well. We're doing very well if we are living our lives mostly in the through me stage. But the as me stage or level is going deep. It is what I call a leap into the deep. And it may be the spiritual home run. In the as me stage, there really is no separation. There is only pure oneness. There's a purity of oneness you see with the eyes of love and oneness. There is no separation. It's what masters refer to, spiritual masters refer to it as God realized. There is no separation, okay? And it's living from the place of the I am, the idea that I am God, not in an ego sense. For some people would say, it's blasphemy to say I am God. But masters, spiritual masters, are able to say that because they have another level of understanding from which they are coming about that. And the analogy that we use is that God is the ocean, and you and I are a drop in that ocean. And as a drop in the ocean, we have all the qualities and attributes of the ocean. We're not saying we're the whole ocean, but because we are a drop in the ocean, we can say we are the ocean in some ways. Okay? And so God is spirit, and you and I are a spiritual being, and God placed that spirit of wholeness and perfection within us, and therefore we can say in some way, we are God. All right? Not the whole ocean. But, and we have to be careful, it's just words right now, because we're talking about an experience, a deep, deep, deep experience that one goes. It's a stage that's off there a ways for every one of us, I would say. You might get a glimpse here and there, but if we start talking about us being there, it's really ego talking. And, it's about the purest of love that would be coming through us. Love and oneness at such a level that it is truly God expressing as me, okay? And Jesus modeled this for us in the Gospel of John, chapter 8. Jesus was speaking to the scribes and the Pharisees, and he said to them, quote, "You neither know me nor my Father. If you had known me, you should have known my Father also." In other words, if you really knew who I was, could see it, feel it, experience it, you would have experienced and known the Father, the source, because there was no difference, is what he was saying. He was speaking from the God as me. If you really knew me, you would know the Father. If you really knew the Father, you'd know that that was me too, because we have the as me in us. It's another level. And so you are walking and talking all the time with God. You are one with everything and everyone, and you are everyone, connected. Our baseball player, now when you go up to bat, you are the batter, you are the pitcher, you are the fielders, you are everyone in the crowd, you're one with it all, one with it all. As Hafiz, the mystic, would say, you are dancing with God, all right? We are all evolving spiritually. It is about answering the call, because we all have the invitation to dance. And are we willing to say consciously yes, not just unconsciously, consciously? And it's helpful to have an awareness of where we are in our stages as we fluctuate through. But hopefully we're all moving really on top of the place where we live, and God is through me, through me. And so let us accept the invitation. Let's dress for the dance. Let's dance the dance and be a light in the world. God bless you all.
Thank you for joining us for today's message. We invite you to be with us again next Sunday. At Unity, we believe that God's presence of love and goodness is everywhere, and that life is meant to be good. You can find out more about Unity and our teachings at unityhouston.org.